Welcome to Job chapter 12. I changed the title from Job Reproves His Friends because there's really not too much reproving. Mainly he's arguing his case, and his argument I titled Job Recounts the Totality of God. It begins, I'll read in Greek, and then we'll go into the chapter. Υπολαβών δε Iob λέγει, Ητα ημείς εστε άνθρωποι, μεθ ημών τολευτήσει σοφία, καμί μεν καρδία καθ ημάς εστι. And undertaken, Job says, so then you are men, then wisdom, does wisdom then come to an end with you? Do you understand everything here is going on? There is also to me indeed a heart like yours. I'm a man just like you are. And then he says, for a just man and blameless was born for an object of taunts. So now we see that the testing of God can take all different types of forms. Here we have the taunting of men, rather than somebody doing us damage, somebody making fun of us. And we see with Paul in Acts 17:32, it says, as he was talking on the hill of the Supreme Court in Athens, to these people, and it says, but hearing a resurrection of dead ones, some taunted, and some in taunting of, yeah, you're making fun of him verbally, but some said, we will hear you again concerning this. So we, as Christians, will receive taunts by people. You're just wasting your time. When's Jesus going to come back? You're just a bunch of fascists, and all sorts of taunts by people. Jesus received taunts. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. Sort of just many taunts. Verse 5, for at an appointed time, man had been prepared to fall under others, also for his house to be pillaged by lawless ones. So here, the test of God can happen to what happened to Job, where he lost his house and his family by lawless ones, marauders. But let not, however, anyone of being wicked rely to be considered innocent. Now, if you're doing wicked, then it would be expected, it's a possibility that bad things will happen to you, a person that's doing wickedly. As many as provoke the Lord to anger, as if there will not also be their chastisement. If you think you can get away, saying, provoking God, if not believing in God, not believing in a judgment, that you're going to get away. If you think that you can get away with sins, you might be able to get away with them for a while. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have done terrible things that are not in jail, have never been in jail, but there's always those types of people around, because other people that see them getting away with their sin think that they can get away with their sin. But again, as I mentioned before, I think if you put it on a weight scale of the amount of people that get away with their sin are very small compared to the ones that are caught and pay the price here on earth. But there's also the price to pay in the judgment that we are going to face after we finish our life here on this earth, and go before the judge, find out if we're guilty and where we're going to go. There is a jail on earth, and why wouldn't there be a jail in the judgment? in the heavens, and that's called Hades. In verse 7, but indeed, ask the four-footed beasts if they should speak to you, or birds of the heaven, if they should report to you, which they're not, and the earth, and let the earth tell in detail, if it should expound to you, and the fishes of the sea shall describe to you. Let all of these tell you about who God is. The ones who knew not among all these that the hand of the Lord made these. Now, does a dog know that he's made by God, or an animal? Probably not, but who knows? We don't know. But we know that God made the animals, made the earth, made the cosmos, the stars, sun, moon, stars. All these things are made by God and controlled by God, as we find out here. In verse 10, except in his hand is the life of all the living and the breath of every man. So that, to me, is the key of life, to know that it's in God's hand. We are in God's hand. Every single molecule, atom, particle, DNA, quantum material, every little single fine thing, everything that's within us, God has created it all. Now, the only thing that limits God is our trying to explain God. And that really doesn't limit him, but it limits him in the mind of man. Because how can we possibly explain God if we can't even explain the simple things in life and why things happen and so forth? And science is always trying, and they come up short because scientific books are always changing every 10 years. Philosophy tries to explain God apart from Jesus Christ, all sorts of reasons of how life began and what it's all about, but nothing about Jesus. I believe philosophy is trying to explain God without Jesus, and with Jesus we don't need philosophy. So, except in his hand is the life of all the living and the breath of every man. So, how long we stay alive is controlled by God. We might like to exercise and keep ourselves in good shape to live longer. I'm not saying that that's not a factor, but God puts it in us to do that. Some people give up and some people kill themselves, live a short life. Verse 11, for the ear indeed scrutinizes words, hearing things, and what's that all about? And the throat tastes grains. This is what life is about. Our body does certain things and certain functions. But in a long time is wisdom, and in long existence is higher knowledge. Basically, what Job is saying, that you live longer, you have more wisdom, you learn more things, how to do things. I can confess to that when I was younger, all the stupid things that I did and the wrong ideas that I had, now I see things way different. But when you have the Spirit that comes from above, as Jesus told Nicodemus, born from above and having the Spirit changes your existence. And so we do have this higher knowledge as Christians. By him, God is wisdom, and wisdom, Sophia, philosophy, the Sophie, philosophy, it comes from that word. By him, by God is wisdom, and this is what Solomon taught in the book of Proverbs, which we just went through. And power, dynamis, with dynamite, comes from that word. And with him is counsel and understanding. This is different than a dog or a donkey or an animal or a fish. Fish don't have counsel. They just have certain DNA instructions that cause them to do certain things. Same thing with the animals. But man has a higher plane than an animal, and he has counsel from other people, from God, and so forth, and understands what's going on and can change. Animals really can't. They can be in a dangerous position, and they wouldn't understand that they could possibly die. And I look at the mountain goats that are on the side of these cliffs, and they're just straight on down. Every once in a while, they'll slip, or the rock will give way, and they'll fall. Well, they don't understand that they're in a dangerous position. Somehow DNA inside of them tells them, hey, go climb on that rock. And they do. And then in 14 it says, if he, God, should throw down, who shall build up? So again, he's the totality of God, of everything. If he tears something down, who can build it up if he doesn't want it to be? If he locks against man, who opens? If somebody is kept from doing certain things, either physically or mentally, spiritually, then God locks it, then who can open it? God. If he should restrain the water, he shall dry the earth, which in many places are being dried up today. We see Lake Mead outside of Las Vegas, is way down, could cause the end of electricity being generated by Boulder Dam, and people not getting water for irrigation in the southern parts of the United States. If he dries it up, well, you can sit there and try to send airplanes and things that cause rain to a certain amount, but that's about it. And if he should slacken, he destroys her, that is the earth, by eradication. And we know that the earth will pretty much be eradicated in the future because of the book of Revelation, which goes into it. Very few people will live through this eradication. And we had the eradication earlier of the dinosaurs, all these large animals, most of them vegetarians, and birds, and they all died. And people think it's because of asteroids hitting the earth, changing the weather, because a lot of the places where these animals were, there was huge vegetation. They can see it from the fossils in the ground. And then probably large plants in the water, or many of them ate and grew into other fish that were eaten by other fish and so forth. Same with the birds, with the petrodactyl. And I think it was a raptor, and huge bird. Verse 16, for to him is might, kratos. We have the krat, might of the people, demography, demos. For to him is might and strength. In him is higher knowledge and understanding. Again, this understanding and higher knowledge of God was way above anything man could fathom. We can't even fathom it, because if you could fathom something, then at least you have some type of an understanding or a knowledge of what you're fathoming. You can't just fathom something that you don't even know exists, because you don't know. And so with God, though, he has the knowledge of everything at the height, because he's made everything. Boy, being a child of God is a powerful thing to be, because he now comes in to every one of us believers, gives us a power of understanding that he has. That's way more than anybody. Now, sure, somebody can not know God and can be a much better mathematician than myself, or he can become a better musician than myself, all sorts of things better than other people. But yet, the knowledge that God has is spiritual knowledge on the whole, and keeping people from making blunders in life. You can be a great mathematician and your life can be one mess after another. Or a musician can be a great guitarist, fastest guitarist in the world, but yet your life is a mess. And so that doesn't compare to the power, the understanding that God can give to us. He leads counselors as captives. Somebody that gives counsel can only give so much counsel. If it's bad counsel, God can stop it. And judges of the earth, he amazes. And Solomon, his judgment would amaze people. He's sitting kings upon thrones and ties a belt on their loins. Now, I believe that means he's leading, he's controlling the kings of the earth. He's sending priests as captives, which he did with the priests of Jerusalem going captive by Nebuchadnezzar into Babylon. And the mighty ones of the earth he eradicates. People that have been very powerful, Napoleon, Hitler, these were all eradicated, lost big time. In reconciling lips of the trustworthy, making their life pleasant, and the understanding of the elders he knew. He knows the good from the bad. Pouring out dishonor upon rulers, but the humble he healed. Now, the humble who is anybody? Yeah, it could be, but a humble ruler is somebody that I believe God wants. And I look at some of the rulers of my country, the United States, and talking about themselves, what they can do, how they can do everything, making the mistake of King Nebuchadnezzar, who looked at his city, Babylon, and said how great he was, and yet God humbled him by making him eat grass like a animal for a period of time. And after he realized that he was not so great, and God did all these things, the humbleness changed his life, and he came back as a powerful person. I would hope that the leaders of the United States that fits this scenario would learn from Nebuchadnezzar, and if given a second time, would be humble, not pointing at anybody here. He's uncovering the deeps from out of darkness, and he leads the shadow of death into light. And then we see in Matthew 4:16, it says, the people sitting in darkness beheld a great light, and to the one sitting in a place in shadow of death, light arose to them. And this was a quotation of Isaiah 9:1-2, but it's talking about Jesus. And it's also in Luke 1:79. And then it continues, Job continues with his talking about the things, the totality of God. He wanders nations and destroying them. Look at that, and I think of the story, we'll go here and read it, of wandering a nation. And the king of Syria was waging war against Israel and consulted with his servants, saying, in the place thus I will camp in a certain concealed place to attack Israel. These people were going to hide. And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, guard to not go by this place, for there Syria hides. So he didn't go there. And the king of Israel sent to the place which the man of God told him, and he guarded from there not once nor twice. But what happened? And the soul of the king of Syria was startled on account of this word. And he called his servants and said to them, well, shall you not announce to me who betrays me to the king of Israel? Who told him that I'm going to this place, basically? And one of his servants said, not so, O master, my master, O king, for Elisha the prophet in Israel He announces to the king of Israel all the words whichever you should speak in the closet of your bedroom. And he, the king, said, Go and see where this one is, and sending, I will take him. And they reported to him, saying, Well, behold, he's in Dothan. And he sent horses and chariots and a heavy force, and they came at night and surrounded the city of Dothan. And the minister of the man of God rose up early and went forth, and he beheld the force was encircling the city with horses and chariots. And his servants said to him, O master, what do we do? And Elisha said, Do not fear, for many are the ones with us over the ones with them. And Elisha prayed and said, O Lord, open his eyes and let him see. And the Lord opened wide the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses, and a chariot of fire surrounding Elisha. God was there. And they came down to him, and Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, Strike indeed this nation with inability to see. And God struck them with inability to see, according to the saying of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, the army of the Syrians, Oh, this is not the city, and this is not the way. Come after me, and I'll lead you to the man whom you seek. And he took them into Samaria, to the center. And it came to pass as he entered into Samaria that Elisha said, O Lord, open the eyes of these and let them see. And the Lord opened wide their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. And the king of Israel said to Elisha, as he beheld them, Shall by striking I strike them, O father? And he, Elisha, said, You shall not strike whom you captured by broadsword and your bow. You shall strike soldiers that are fighting. But place bread, loaves, and water before them, and let them eat and drink, and let them go forth to their master. And he placed for them a great feast. And they ate and drank, and he sent them, and they went forth to their master. And the armed bands of Syrians did not proceed still to come into the land of Syria. So God wandered the nations as wandering nations and destroying them. I believe Israel is going to be attacked by these nations, as it talks about in the 38th, 39th chapter of the book of Ezekiel. And these nations will be blinded by God, not by Israel. He prostrated nations and directing them. And we look at some nations, all of a sudden things can change overnight. All of a sudden Russia attacked Ukraine and changed everything, and now everybody's worried about China attacking the island used to be called Formosa. Now it's Taiwan. And so people are worried about that. But God is in control of even what happens with nations, and there's nothing we really can do. If I vote, am I going to change anything? No. Voting is used by God, I'm sure, to elect people, but as a Christian, I don't need to vote. God is going to do what God wants, and he's not telling me to vote. He's telling me not to be part of the world. If you're a friend of the world, you're an enemy to God, he says. So warning us about thinking that we matter in the realm of things going on in the high areas where God is in control. We don't. I don't. And he prostrates nations and he directs them. He's reconciling the hearts of rulers of the earth, but wandering them in a way which they knew not. They think they're going to be successful. I'm sure the head of Russia thought it would be easy to take over the Ukraine, and he was drawn into this battle for some reason. And I'm not picking sides here, but things may turn out to be bad for Russia. Who knows? You'll know in the future. And then he says, he finishes up, not finish up because he goes on in 13, but may they handle darkness and not light. May they be wandering as if one being intoxicated. And the rulers that don't believe in God is what I believe that he's talking about here. And may they handle darkness. And I think also another word could be groping. May they be groping darkness and trying to, when you're dark and you can't see anything, you got to feel things around you to figure out where you're at. And so these rulers of the earth, they're in darkness, and God is, our devil, a lot of it is the devil, because it says he's the ruler of the world, and they're just groping for whatever. And they're wandering as if being intoxicated, as being drunk. But not us believers. We walk with the power of God and not the intoxication of the world, hopefully. Chapter 13, the next video seminar, again, it continues with Job's, I say reproof here, but we'll find out if it's reproof or if it's more of the totality of God. Either way, hope you'll join us in the next video seminar. And until then, God bless.